productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanic Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of The Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics today, and it's one that everybody, when I'm coaching them or doing a training seminar, they seem to get a lot out of. They perk up, and there's a lot of tips in what I'm going to talk about today that I believe many people get a lot of value out of, and that is being more productive with your time management. There's only so many hours in a day, and being able to maximize the hours that you are working is pretty important, but it's so easy to get off the path, for distractions to come along and to take you off your bigger goals and put you onto smaller day-to-day firefighting types of situations. And man, that just kills your productivity, and it extends your ability, your opportunity to achieve your longer-term goals. So you're faced with endless time pressures, both running your organization, maintaining your personal life, staying up with connections, doing the things you need to do to bring in new business and maintain client relationships. Guess what? It's a fact of life. There's nothing we can do to change all that. It's a necessity of life, and you can't get everything done. You're just not. So effective time management really comes down to taking a very strategic and using the right tactics to choose what you are going to do. And when I say that, one of the topics we're going to talk about this morning, or I'm going to talk about, is reminding yourself of what you should not be doing, what should be on your to-don't list, not on your to-do list. And I got to tell you, it's a constant struggle, even for myself, to not get caught up in the day-to-day when I've got big stuff I've got to get done. So understand that if you don't meter your time, if you don't manage your time, you are going to end up being burnt out. And I've seen this happen so many times to especially small business owners, in that they're trying to do everybody's job. They get caught up in small minutia during the course of the day. They are not empowering their employees to make decisions. They don't trust their employees to make good decisions. So they end up with their hands in everything. And when I say everything, literally everything. And giving up that trust, empowering your employees, is one of the first big paradigms that any leader of a business or a team has got to get their mind wrapped around. And I get it. They are concerned that something's going to get done wrong. It's going to cost them a lot of money, or it's going to make them look bad, or it's a litany of justifications that go on in their mind as to why you don't want to empower or delegate or hand over the trust that you should to your employees that are out there doing it every day. There's lots of positive byproducts to doing that, but man, is that hard to break through that wall. So we're going to talk about all that today. And in this constant attempt to getting everything done during the course of the day, we got to give up some things. Let's just start with that notion and understanding that. Stick with me through this radio show, this podcast, because if you're serious about gaining control of your time, not letting the day control you, you control the day. If you're serious about that, the first thing you're going to have to come to grips with is you got to give up some stuff. You got to let loose of some things that maybe over years or decades that you've become very comfortable in handling every day. But what I'm always concerned with, and it's happened to myself, is in this attempt to handle everything, get everything done, not spend a little money or take some trust and hand it over to somebody, to allow them to get some of the lower level priorities done for you, it leads to exhaustion, low energy, burnout. It's a heavy toll. You're not a nice person at the end of the day when you come home, so it takes a toll on your family, on your loved ones at home. You can sometimes, and I've seen this happen often, is you lose passion for your career, your job, your business. You sometimes even resent having to go to work because your work is making your life miserable. Now, that's a slightly over dramatization, but let me tell you, there's a level of truth to just about anybody that is not somewhat proficient, if not very proficient at time management. You got to make sure, in order to be a high impact leader, that one, you're going to give up trust, you're going to get some things off your plate. And one of the big byproducts of that is you're going to have less stress in your life. You're going to have a clearer mind. You're going to be more focused, and you are going to do a better job on the activities that you do choose to work into your daily routine or into this week's priority list or this week's or this month's to-do list. Because you cannot allow time management obstacles to get in the way of the big picture. You got to start with what's happening in your organizational life and how it's impacting your personal life, and understand that the goal in all this is just make you a nicer person at home, make you a better husband or wife, make you a better parent, make you a better friend. You might even pick up a few strokes on your golf game. It's going to bring a lot of added value at work because you're just going to be a better boss, I guarantee you. And the other byproduct of giving up this trust, delegating things, empowering the people who surround you, is they really appreciate it. They truly appreciate the trust that you're placing in them. It invigorates them, it motivates them, and more importantly, it creates this bond between them and their employer, you, them and their leader, their boss, you. And they'll stay with you longer. Your turnover will be reduced. That's just one of many signs that maybe you're taking on too many projects, is you've got high turnover. You can't hang on to people. The number one reason why people leave their jobs is because of a bad boss. And when you start asking those people who left, 50% leave because of the boss, 50%, half, leave because they don't have a good connection with their boss, that their boss isn't helping them learn and grow. Their boss is not providing them with the tools and materials they need to get their job done. Their boss doesn't listen to their opinion. Their boss doesn't trust them. Their boss isn't invested in their development, their future development. And that's all created by you hanging on to way too much of your day-to-day. Now, I have to work with many people one-on-one to get them to finally realize that they're making a huge mistake by working as many hours as they're working. Yet, this is really beyond putting out fires. Whenever I encounter an organization leader who is constantly putting out fires, rescheduling meetings, can't make an appointment, always late, finding a hard time or having a hard time finding time to schedule things during their day, it all leads me to believe they've got a time management problem, and they do. On the notion that if you're working too many hours or you're frustrated, stressed out during the course of the day, you're just not going to be very effective at dealing with the problems or situations you face as an organizational leader. The good news is you can overcome the common time management obstacles that keep you from achieving your high impact results. You absolutely can. It takes some discipline on your part. It requires some changes of habits on your part, but man, the rewards at the end are terrific. Takes effort, takes the willingness to change. So time management obstacle number one always will be, the biggest obstacle is you. Too many managers underachieve because of their own poor time management decisions. And again, it's decisions. It's not forced on you. Nobody's got a gun to your head or going to kidnap your kids to get you to do some of the things that you're doing during the course of the day. Time management success is not an accident. It's very deliberate. Time management is something that's brought on by deliberate actions and commitments by you to making a change. The success of a high-impact organizational leader depends first and foremost on how they manage themselves. And overcoming time management obstacles and being able to cut through the minutia, ignore certain things, delegate certain things is the first biggest step. You got to trust, you got to delegate, and you got to say no. Most organizational leaders are just not very accountable to anyone, which means they're not very accountable even to themselves. And so they tend to allow themselves to get away with things that they shouldn't. Without a coach, without a mentor, without somebody holding them accountable, they're going to keep going on with their old habits. And this really is about forming new habits. And then your subordinates, you got to understand that nobody's going to step up who works for you and volunteer to give you objective advice. God almighty, if I've heard this once, I've heard it 100 times, is nobody's ever said anything. None of my employees have always complained, or I've never complained. They always tell me they love me. Come on, let's get real, guys. Your employees, they have to tell you that. Now, in some cases, it's very sincere. But just because nobody's complaining to you doesn't mean they're not complaining behind your back. Yeah, I've said it many times when people who I've been coaching or mentoring or developing come to me and they say, "Oh my God, I heard this person is complaining about me. One of my employees is complaining about me behind my back," and that just torques me off so bad. And I have to bring them down to real life is, hey man, if they're not complaining about you, you're not working very hard. That's part of being a boss, is people going to complain about you. And it is the very rare culture that allows for your direct reports to complain to you. So do not use as an excuse, as a cop-out to not making the changes you need to make in your management life, your daily business life, to become more effective with your time management. Because there's no one other than yourself who can hold you responsible for creating a disciplined approach to time management. I'm going to tell you a little story. Mel was a mortgage broker, and he decided to go from being the sole employee responsible for sales. It was a plan which he was going to bring on additional salespeople. He was finally going to give up the reins of being the sole rainmaker in the company. So the new plan started by him hiring the first salesperson. And that would lead up to eventually hiring 2 more salespeople. And as he did this, as we coached with Mel, he told me that hiring that first salesperson was going to be his top priority for the next month. By the time I got back to him next month, he was going to have the salesperson hired and ready to come on board. A month later, when I visited with him, I asked him about how many salespeople he'd hired. Had he hired that first one? He responded with a little bit of a stutter, no. And when I asked him why he wasn't being accountable to the plan that he committed to me for, his time management plan, we had 1,000 excuses. Chief among them was not having the time. I just didn't have the time to interview a bunch of people. So I went back and I recounted the reasons that he had agreed to the previous month. And man, was he excited that previous month. And that's the challenge we all face when we make these kind of commitments to ourselves to go change something, is we're excited at the time and then life smacks us in the face. What's the old saying? You want to see God laugh, tell him your plan. So as I went back and I reminded him of all the reasons he wanted to do this a month ago and all the commitments he had made to making this his priority, and that Mel knew that he needed to hire that first salesperson. That first salesperson was going to be the breakthrough for him so that he could spend less time on sales activities and focus more working on his business, not in his business, working on the other areas of his business that he just isn't spending enough time. So beyond all the excuses Mel gave me was one simple reality. He failed to hold himself accountable. I can only hold my tab members or my ATC clients accountable to a certain level. Self-accountability is huge in all this. And Mel's time management problems were very common, perhaps the most common of all. Not holding themselves accountable to getting done the big stuff that has to get done. In Mel's case, it was hiring some salespeople. And you will find yourself face to face at some point, probably very early on in this, in your either your current life or your future management career. And you must accept the reality that you and you alone must be self-accountable for making better time management decisions. You got to make it happen. Nobody else is going to prod you along. It's all up to you. You are the catalyst for the success or the failure of your own time management. You cannot truly be effective at wrangling in your time without understanding the why behind your decisions, about how and why you use your time. So that's generally the most important step to understanding how you fix something is, why did it happen to start with? Why is this happening in my life? And the big question is, what specific actions have I committed to completing prior to what date? I got to tell you, putting things in writing, I love whiteboards. I love putting things on a plan sheet. Something about the power of writing things down and assigning them a completion date, I've learned through my career, gets things done. And it helps me stay on top of the big items that I need to stay on top of. And if you'll write your commitments down, you keep it on a whiteboard, you keep it on some kind of spreadsheet that you look at on a regular basis, get it, even if it's handwritten and pinned to a bulletin board. And you look at those commitments as part of every day, it's right under your nose, you're much more likely to achieve that challenge. So time management obstacle number 2 is you're too busy with day-to-day matters. You just got too much that gets in your way of getting the big stuff done. It creates a lot of preoccupation. You feel committed to things that always seem to be overdue or about to be overdue. You keep working under the gun. The perpetual time pressure keeps you from focusing on what is really important. And let me just make this point. Even the most successful time managers are hard-pressed to come up with their best ideas, solutions, methods, whatever, every single day if they're constantly under pressure. You got to release your mind. Your mind has got to be able to free flow. And if you got a million things flowing at it and a to-do list that's a mile long, you're just not going to be as creative or as effective. High-impact managers, they zero in on their most important priorities and do them very well. And they block out, ignore, delegate things that are less important. They're down the priority scale. And they trust their people to get things done. They very often, I've seen this a lot in my life, is there's an open door policy. And that door is yours. And your employees are streaming in and out all day long asking questions. How do I do this? What about that? Getting permission to do this. And you constantly have a flow of distractions of people asking you questions or asking permissions. And that creates the illusion that they're so dependent on you. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Could not be further from the truth. You've just created a habit for them and for you that you're the person, that this is the process, and before I can do something, before I can go take action on something, I got to clear it with the boss. Or they're afraid of doing something wrong. So to cover their behinds, they come to you and ask how it should be done or when it should be done or permission to get something done. Let me offer to you how to overcome that. It's a big step. Sounds so simple, but it's a really big step. Try this. The next time you come to work and your door's open and you start seeing that your stream of employees or direct reports coming into your office, asking you questions, asking your permission, asking you how to do things, respond to them with a question. How do you think you should do it? How would you do it if you were me? What would you do? How do you think we should do it? And you're going to find a surprising pattern. About 90% of the time, they're going to tell you pretty much what you were going to tell them. They already knew. You're just an extra step in the process. In fact, you are slowing them down. Unintentionally, but you're slowing them down. And pretty soon, if you keep responding to them with, what do you think you should do? What do you think the best way to handle this is? If I weren't here, how would you handle it? They're going to start gaining confidence, and they're going to quit coming in your door. They're going to start unleashing from you and be able to go fly on their own, which frees up a ton of time. If you're spending 2 or 3 hours a day talking to employees about questions and problems and that sort of thing, it's another day in the week by the end of the week. That's another 10-hour day if you're doing it 2 hours a day. You're freeing up a whole day's worth of additional productivity if you can just cut out an hour or two of the stuff that is not mandatory for you to do, if you're willing and accountable to yourself to start giving up that authority. And when you think about it, the issues that they're bringing to you, they're pretty low-level issues most of the time. So let me tell you another quick story. Sharon, she was an organizational leader in a company. I worked with her. When she and I first started working together, it was because she was so overwhelmed by having to do too many day-to-day tasks. She said that she had no time to focus on her most important task or to be able to make the time to think strategically. There's just too many day-to-day things, too much going on. She claimed there was no way she could ever catch up. She was perpetually weeks behind on everything. So if she couldn't get caught up with what she had, how was she ever going to get ahead? And she freely admitted that she was not getting things done in a timely fashion. In fact, she had gained the reputation within her organization, with her team, is she's going to be late. She's not going to be very dependable. She'll eventually get it done, but she's not going to get it done when she originally says she's going to get it done, because she's always so behind. So what I asked Sharon to do is to bring me a list of things that must be done. Must be done. Go compile that list over the next month, and when we sit down next month for our coaching session, I want the list of things that must be done. And that next month, I about fell out of my chair. She had over 100 items on that list. And with a quick glance at this list, I easily identified a number of items that were such low priority. And they probably did not even have to be done in the next 12 months. So I asked Sharon to put a check mark next to all the items that she absolutely had to get done the following day. And after going through several pages and identifying all the stray items that were not really high priorities, it turned into there was 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 things out of 100 that had to be done the next day. That's one of the lessons. Sharon came to me with 100-item must-do list. And we'd gone through, we edited it down. And once we really talked about each item, we got that down to 5 items that had to be done that day. Went from 100 to 5. And no wonder poor Sharon was feeling so overwhelmed and behind, because she really, before we went through this exercise, truly believed that many things to do that day. So our next step in this whole exercise was I asked her to put a check mark. Put a check mark to all the things that absolutely had to get done the following day. And after going through several pages and identifying all the stray items that were not really high priorities, we came down to the 5. And then we went on to continue to break down this very large list into smaller day-to-day lists based on priority status. See, understanding priorities, you can have a really long to-do list, but the next most important step to having a to-do list is prioritizing that to-do list. You gotta think through it. Does this take some extra time? In the beginning, it does. In the beginning, it certainly does. But as you deliberately practice this, you create this new habit of giving more thought as to what's on your list, why it's on the list, and what's a priority on your list. You'll get better and better at it. So in the process of going through and prioritizing her list, we completely eliminated 25 items. So almost 25% went off the list completely. It never really had to be done. They were nice to haves, they weren't must haves. Or things had changed since she had put them on the list and they no longer needed to be done. So we took some items and then reduced their magnitude, some other items, and reduced their magnitude by determining tasks that could be delegated to others. This was the fun part. I love this part of the exercise. And in the end, we brought Sharon's huge, large, over 100-item list of things to do down to 50 items over the next month. And then over the next month, and then we spread them out on a day-to-day basis. And not one of the days had more than 5 items that needed to be done. Ta-da! Sharon no longer felt threatened by the things that had to be done. She lost some anxiety. She lost some stress in her life. It's amazing when you go through this exercise how you sleep better at night. This is better than Ambien. And it all happened because she just took the time to prioritize and sit down and set a written to-do list that had the proper thought going into it of what had to be done, what didn't have to be done, what she could delegate, and then what she personally had to do. We went from 100 items to 50 items to 5 items to less than a couple a day that she had to do over the coming months. So takeaway from this for you should be make the time, take the time to prioritize and set up a written to-do list. Get everything written down. That's the first major step. Prioritize it. And if you start the day without setting up a schedule, that you're not scheduling these list of priorities. One of the tricks I've taught myself is to put it on my calendar, schedule it like an appointment, block the right amount of time on my calendar to set it aside, and nothing, no meeting, no interruption, no phone call. These cell phones we carry around have an off button. They don't have to be on all the time. And I can't remember once in all the years they've been around that I missed a phone call that impacted my life dramatically. That nothing was burning down that I couldn't deal with later. So not everything's a priority when that phone rings. Turn the thing off or leave it in another room, put it on silent, stick it in a drawer. Don't let that distract you while you've time blocked your alone time or your me time to go get your high priority items done. Put it on a calendar, schedule the right amount of time, close the door. And the other part of that varies from person to person is when you're scheduling this on your calendar. If it's something that's really important, something you've really got to put a lot of thought and exercise into, schedule it during your most productive time of the day. For me, that's early in the morning. I like to get started at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Anybody that's worked with me through the years knows I'm an early bird. I'm typically up by 4:30 in the morning, at my desk no later than 6, and I'm going to work. Now, I also go to bed early at night. I'm not very good past 6, 7 o'clock at night. I get all my big important stuff done early in the morning, but I've got many people would rather wait till everybody goes home at the end of the day to schedule their big important stuff. Whatever works for you. There's no time that is a cookie cutter to make this work. But take the time to write up your to-do list, prioritize it, get it on your calendar, schedule it like a doctor's appointment at the right time of day, and then protect yourself from distractions while you're doing that. You're going to face multiple tasks during the day. You've got all the temptation in the world not to get this done. It's easy to be distracted. You can take some proper steps to protect yourself. I've got lots more to talk about on this subject. Let me give you 3 more tips. 3 more tips to be more effective, more efficient in ways to schedule your time. Just 3 more thoughts I want you to carry through with this is anything that's recurring. You've got weekly meetings. We're setting up your calendar now, I should say. You got weekly meetings. Get the times that you can't do anything, go ahead and block those off. Whether it's a sales meeting, a team meeting, a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting, whatever those meetings are, get that onto your calendar and then protect those. You don't want to allow those meetings, which are important to everybody that's attending. Don't disrupt other people's to-do lists because you can't keep your crap together. Block it and respect it, unless it's an emergency. So block all your recurring items. Second, you should deal with the items that need to be completed within the next 30 days. Those higher priority items with a shorter timeline. Make sure to identify the specific day and time that you're going to work on those items over the next 30 days. Do it early. Do it early in the 30 days. Don't schedule it the day before it needs to be done, which most of you wouldn't, but I've seen it happen. If you get it done early, you take that pressure off, you're going to get it done, that time pressure off, you're going to get it completed at a much more effective level. You're going to have time to think more about it, put a lot more strategic thought into it. So schedule it early. When I say early, if you got 30 days in the first 10 to 15 days. And then if you need to go back and tweak it a little bit, you got time to go back and tweak it some. I can't tell you how many times I've completed a project, patted myself on the back, and then a week later thought, oh, this would make this even better. I could do this. And so I had the time to go in, adjust it a little bit to make it even better. But if I did it in the last week and the week after it was completed and delivered, I thought of it, horses left the barn. The third thing, make sure you're identifying all the low priority items that are on your to-do list. These are items that do not have to be completed within 30 days and may not even have a completion date at all. They're just things that have to get done whenever you find an available moment to act on them. You don't put those on your calendar. What you might want to do is remind yourself on the calendar, check your low priority to-do list. So those are 3 tips that have worked for me, and I know it works for others that I've taught how to do this. Time management obstacle number 3, not tackling large, overwhelming tasks. We often put those off. They're big, they're hard, they're generally things that are longer term. These are the items that typically are going to have the biggest long-term impact on your business. This is described very often as working on your business. And psychologically, many leaders, many managers, many business owners put these things off because they're just overwhelmed by the magnitude of getting it done, and they allow the various tasks that occur during the course of the day. It gives them permission to keep putting it off. Don't be one of those people. Be a great time manager. Do not allow yourself to become intimidated or overwhelmed by the size and the complexity of a big project that you've got in front of you. You want to bring tasks down to a size that is small, manageable pieces. What's that old saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's one of the most important steps of accomplishing a really big project is let's break this down into very easy pieces, small bites to get it done. And when you break it down into these manageable pieces, that allows you in your mind to make the commitment to finishing it in a much more effective and efficient timeline. You're far less likely to freeze with inaction if you look at a major task from the perspective of how and when you must accomplish it through phases of the process. And most big tasks are going to take multiple steps. You're not going to be able to knock out a big one in one sitting. You've got to spread it out over time. So there's multiple steps. Prioritize those multiple steps. Create a detailed schedule, get it on your calendar that lists all the steps, maybe who's involved with the decision or executing those steps, but time block that. Get it on your calendar, treat it like a doctor's appointment again. Make sure that you've got starting and ending completion dates on this, not only on the big project, for each step along the way. All this will keep you from becoming overwhelmed. Paralysis by analysis. And I got to tell you, you are going to be amazed upon completing these steps, how this big task becomes so much easier. When you break it down into easy bite-sized steps, it's so much easier to get it done. And that big monster that you had to get done breezes by. And in the future, you're much more confident with less stress and worry of getting the next big project accomplished. So let me tell you just a quick story. I was working with a team that were preparing to move into a new office building. And Juanita, the director of operations, commented to me that she felt overwhelmed. I don't know how I'm going to get all this done. She had to get light fixtures, carpet, cabinets, had to arrange the IT, painters, patchers, carpeting, and on. She was pretty overwhelmed. And so Juanita and I, the two of us sat down. We spent a couple hours on this. We sat down and we broke the entire process into smaller pieces. We took that elephant and we broke it down into smaller bites. And we prioritize the decision-making needs according to what had to be decided by what date. So we almost worked from the completion date backwards, and we worked from the walls and the ceilings and the floor in. And by breaking down that process, taking the time to prioritize what decisions need to be made, allowed Juanita and me helping her make the needed decisions with out all that overwhelm paralysis that she was facing before we did this. We just logically broke everything down, discussed it, thought about the order of which everything had to be done, and just sat down item by item. Carpet, paint, cubicles, computers, IT, electrical, lighting, furniture, whatever else had to be brought in. We just assigned dates to it in a logical manner. And it was just amazing how the Juanita that came into that meeting was a very different Juanita when she left that meeting. She was less stressed. She was less overwhelmed. She wasn't paralyzed anymore. And you just take these big projects, break them down into smaller ones, and it just frees up a ton of mental space, allowing your mind to be less freaked out. I'm going to cover one more time management obstacle. It's one of my favorites, and that's not managing your time spent on text, emails, and calls. I mentioned earlier, when you're time blocking, it's okay to turn your cell phone off. I've had several people track this during the course of the day, and they're always blown away by how much time they spend on emails, texts, and phone calls. Just because the phone rings does not make it a priority. They've got voicemail. Just because the text bell rings doesn't mean you have to look at it and respond to it right now. If you're working on something more important, you got to respect the project that you're working on and stay with it. All those things can be accomplished later. So many people make the mistakes of starting their day with the best of intentions. And then they sit down at their computer, they come to work, they go to their computer, they turn on the screen, and they got 50 emails from the day before. They also have a to-do list that's prioritized. And they start working through those emails first, which isn't on the priority list. And then all of a sudden, the door opens, the next obstacle comes in, the next fire has to be put out. There's 20 more emails that have to be read, something has to be done to, they have to be responded to. And the end of the day rolls around, guess what never got done? You've got to work on your high priority tasks first before you deal with emails, texts. Just don't look at them. There's no law that says you can.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the Business Mechanic Show. If today's content resonates with you, then you're going to love what we have to offer. For those of you who are ready to take your business or personal career to the next level, we have an array of training and coaching services tailored just for you. From performance coaching designed to enhance your potential, to executive coaching that guides leaders to steer their ships towards greater success. Are you in sales management or looking to fortify your leadership acumen? Dive into our sales management training and coaching. Not only will it sharpen your strategies, but it will also provide you an ROI that's undeniable. Remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself and your team. For those seeking flexible learning options, we're excited to share our online and in-person management leadership classes. These aren't just your typical courses. They are meticulously crafted, ensuring that they align with your unique needs and aspirations. And the best part, prices start at just $47 per month, making top-tier coaching and training accessible for everyone. Your growth, both personally and professionally, can have a ripple effect, the one I call the transformational triangle of change. The skills you learn, the perspectives you gain, and the efficiencies you create can translate into increased revenues, more cohesive teams, and an enriched company culture. So why wait? The potential ROI on this investment isn't just in dollars, it's in the progressive future you're carving out for yourself and your organization. Thanks once again for tuning in, and remember, Every business needs a tune-up every now and then. Let the Business Mechanic Show be your guide. Check out our website, rdltraining.com, to discover more details on our programs and coaches. We have a link in the show notes to guide you there. Until next time, we're out of here.